Hi, from well up here at the top of one of my tree ferns. It's always a nerve-wracking day to unwrap the tree ferns, but I think it's really time to start thinking about taking their winter covering off. This particular winter has been absolutely brutal here in the UK. Not only has it been bitterly cold, but it's also been sopping wet in 3 or 4 distinct batches. We had lots and lots of rain before it was absolutely freezing cold. Then we had a long period of dry weather, which was fairly mild, and then an awful lot of rain again, and then a really biting period of cold. And it's really that combination of cold and wet that's going to really cause you to lose an awful lot of plants. I'm absolutely positive I've wrapped this up perfectly well, as I have done in other years. This particular tree fern has stood up to the beast from the east outside, wrapped up just as I have done now. But I think it's going to be a terrible year for storing dahlia tubers over winter. I've certainly lost 1 or 2 large shrubs in the garden due to the cold. But I think now, as we head to the very end of March, it's time to start taking about the winter protection off of these. The very top layer is a hand towel, which I popped on when it got really cold the other week, so that's kind of come off, and I'm not going to strip this all the way back. I'm then just going to start taking off the layers of stuff. And I don't know if you remember, those of you that joined me for the covering up of these, all I did is take the old fronds that were blackened off by the frost, I cut them up and I chucked them into the very top, and then weighted them down with a towel. So that's coming off. We're then down to the first tea towel that I popped in the top, and then underneath that is another layer of leaves and broken up tree fronds. Some of this is still attached, so I'm just going to cut some of these stems away. So I'm not going to strip all of this away this morning. I'm going to leave some of this in place just to give it a little bit of protection. Certainly the cuff that you might be able to see around the tree fern itself is going to remain, just to give it a little bit of protection from the inclement weather. But what I want to do is I want to check that, one, the tree fern is alive, and secondly, I also just want to make sure that it has all of the water and nutritional value it needs. So I'm just cutting some of these strings which I've put round the tree fern itself to keep this hat of old fronds on. Just going to throw those out of the way, and we're nearly down to the layer of straw, which is one of the layers that is going to stay on this tree fern just to give it some protection. And I'm gingerly going to take this off and see whether, oh, look at that, absolutely beautiful. I will obviously post a picture of this later. The compost is completely and utterly rotted away. There's a preflor of woodlouse and little creepy crawlies living in the crown, which is a really good sign. One, that means it's been kept fairly dry. There's plenty of organic matter processing there, which means there's lots of nutritional value for the tree fern. And I can see, well, I'm not going to count them all, because you have to be careful at this stage that you don't break them off and damage them. This wasn't me, but that's an old frond that hasn't actually managed to come about. This has, I think, something in the region of 25 to 30 little tiny sort of orangutan arms, which I've often talked about, that unfurl out from the center, all lined up and ready to go. So these look absolutely great. Try not to, if you're doing the same as me and unwrapping these, try not to get your fingers down there and poke around too tightly. You will actually damage and bruise them over a period of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and tidy up these old fronds. Obviously these are all now spent. You want to cut these down and leave these a couple of inches long, but you want to make sure that you're taking these down far enough that they're well out of the way of any new growth and they don't impinge on those beautiful new fronds as they unfurl. Throw those away. Plenty here to cut off. I think we ended up with, should have actually counted these, I think we ended up with about 36 fronds on the tree fern last year, and it's always my aim to make sure we end up with more fronds every year than we had the year before. Right, cutting these away. So being careful not to take them too low. Anything that's green, incidentally, still has nutritional value in it. It has the ability to soak back into the crown of the plant and give it energy. So don't cut off too much, don't make it overly tidy. Watching my fingers there, just cutting away the rest of these. And then what we're going to actually do is we're going to give this tree fern its first bit of water. Now I know that sounds silly, we still are expecting a few frosts possibly over the next few weeks, so we do need to be a little bit careful that we're not getting it too wet, and we're going to remain with this little straw hat on the top, which aren't going to get in the way of the fronds. But having been covered up so heavily by 2 tea towels, the layer of straw, the compost, the actual old frond sat on top, you might find when you uncover your tree fern that it's actually fairly dry. So what I want to do is just give it a little bit of water and really give that crown a good drench. Now, if you are doing this over the next couple of weeks, try and do this in the middle part of the day if you can, to make sure that the tree fern has the ability just to shed any excess water that it might carry going through into the evenings. Obviously, we still are expecting frost and cold weather, and what you don't want to do is saturate that and have water sat up in the crown here that could actually freeze overnight. All I'm going to do then is just break this hay and straw up and just very gently place it back on top of the tree fern. I've got another smaller one that's around 4 feet high. I'm going to do exactly the same with that one, and I'm going to keep a close eye on this, and as soon as I see this straw and hay start to be pushed out of the way, that's the point where we know that those fronds are starting to emerge, and at that point they really are fairly safe. And if we do get some really cold weather, I might just chuck a very light cloth over the top of it just to keep it a little bit of the weather off of it. But that's it, that's all unwrapped and ready to go. And I now will start over the next couple of weeks, as it starts to emerge and I start seeing those fronds appear over the sides of the tree fern, I'll consider taking this cuff off, which is obviously the first layer of protection that went on, protecting the top 18 inches of the tree fern from the weather. I'll take that off, and then it will be into feeding and watering twice a day, every day, because all of the nutritional value, although it does have the ability to raise capillary action up through the trunk and draw small amounts of moisture from the ground, most of the action happens from the very top here in the crown. Anyway, it's a job that I've got to get on with, so I'm going to go and unwrap the small one, but that's a really nice sign that the protection that I put onto this tree fern has been enough to protect it from the very cold that we've had this year. So they're a lot more hardy than you might first think. Anyway, I've got to crack on. I'll see you soon. Take care now. Bye bye.